Hello everyone and welcome to another video. In this one, it'll be a special one where I do a collaboration with my friends and co-workers. Alex, Historylegends, Ian, New World Econ, and Wyatt, DPA. We will be talking about Solidar and a lot of things thereof. So I hope you will enjoy this part 1 of the collaboration. The second and third parts will be out shortly. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoy.
No, you have to do it!
Ian, you have to pow pow.
Okay. Yeah. Intro.
Intro.
Hello everyone and welcome to another video. In this one we're sitting here four together. We have Ian from New World Econ, we have Alex from Historylegends, and we have Wyatt from DPA, and you have your boy Weep Union. And today we're going to be talking about Solidar. So what exactly happened at Solidar? The Wagner PMC took it over. How did it happen?
Apparently not. CBC told me it's still Ukrainian. It's still Ukraine. The Washington Post said they're still holding. So all you say is lies. I believe the mainstream media.
According to my sources, the pro-Ukrainian side still have a lot of salt. So I don't think the salt mine has fallen. No, they are really very salty now. So I think salt supply has been pretty well maintained.
I just want to say that I already told my viewers, if you have some stocks in salt, you better sell it.
I heard that all of this is just big sea salt. They're behind everything, There's a hybrid war between sea salt and land salt.
Maybe it was a conspiracy of salt companies that just wanted more power, so they attacked Solidar, and this is why they went for the salt mines. With that being said, okay, honestly, one of the reasons why I didn't post a video on Solidar yet is because I didn't expect it to collapse so fast. I was like, oh, it's going to be gradual, slowly. In 24 hours, it was gone.
It's your fault.
Why? Why is it my fault?
One of my so yesterday I did a live session. One of my open mic speakers, he said that it's actually your fault. He said that the Ukrainian soldiers at Soledar opened their laptop and then they started to watch YouTube, and then they just happened to decide to watch Historylegends, and then they saw the video on Soledar. Then they were like, "Fuck, we are screwed." He's like, and then he's like, no. Then they decided to retreat. So you destroyed the operational.
People are making memes that generals are watching my videos and all this. I'm like, what? Imagine Ukrainian generals and Russian ones are looking at it and they're like, yeah. The Ukrainian ones are like, yeah, we gotta pull back. Yeah, he said it.
I don't want to die. I don't want to die saltily, Yeah, so they died.
Anyway, it seems Ukrainians are a bit salty that they lost Solidar. So what do you think is going to happen next?
Because they say that it's going to be like the Stalingrad, just like when Severodonetsk, they said, this is going to be Stalingrad. Then Lysychansk, it's going to be Stalingrad. Then now Solidar, Stalingrad. The Stalingrad just don't appear. So
they have given it on to Bakhmut, and Bakhmut is going to be Stalingrad, I'm sure, as there's already 100,000 troops in Bakhmut. We're just missing the 1.9 million for it to turn around.
Oh, yeah.
So you think that there's 100,000 troops around Bakhmut?
Well, according to militaryland.net, it's 86,000, but it's probably not at full strength, the brigades. So it's probably around 60,000 at most.
So it would be 86,000 if those brigades were fresh. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. There's 20 brigades in and around Bakhmut.
Yeah, because I personally do not think that there's this much troops. My own random estimates based on my gut feeling is 20,000-30,000 at most, because you look at the size of the battle is actually not that big at Soledad. To imagine 80,000 or 60,000.
Maybe maybe you guys are both right. Maybe there is constantly 25,000 men on the front, but they're rotating people. So maybe 100,000 were involved in the battle, but on the front line it's not 100,000 guys. There's multiple lines of defense and all this. So yeah, I think there's still a lot of people. For me, it's the biggest battle of the war so far because it's a tiny place and it's just like a huge battle.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. Absolutely, it definitely seems like the largest conflict yet. So, what exactly, for people watching that didn't know what happened, what exactly was the chain of events here that led to the fall of Soledar?
I wonder if your viewers realize, when do we start being serious and when do we start being comedic?
People ask.
A joke. Is that the reason halfway?
So apparently not right now. Apparently not yet.
Going back. No, going back to the point about the number of soldiers, I think by brigade numbers there is 86,000, but that is only if they were full strength. But I think most of them are probably at less than 25% strength. I think there's probably about the 32,000 troops, but then they're just split up into brigades sized, despite being battalion sized, and they just don't have time to reorganize. Because looking at the Soledar area, there were about 3 to 4 brigades in that area, and the Russians are claiming 25,000 casualties. That is the 4 brigades plus more. And if they've been rotating, then that would explain the amount of casualties. Even Western sources claim over 10,000 casualties.
But some people, I read a Telegram group, and he said it's more like 6,000 casualties for Ukraine in Soledar. I don't think there's that many people.
I've heard that as well. The way I put it to my viewers was, if they're saying it's 25,000 casualties, they're saying dead plus wounded for that, right?
Yeah.
So more like 6,000 to 7,000 dead, but still I think that's probably a pretty steep number. I mean, especially, it's coming from the Russian side, and we've seen it throughout the war. Both sides are going to put out information that's to their favor. I think if you were to suggest that in the battle for Bakhmut Soledar, which this is basically one big industrial agglomeration here, from when that battle started, I guess you could say like end of November, December till now, if you were to suggest that Ukraine has lost 25,000 troops in terms of combat capability, that's probably a pretty accurate, maybe plus or minus like estimation of that. Which that's 25,000 troops that Ukraine doesn't have to throw around, if you ask me. And that's kind of one of the bigger things I'd like to talk about is like, what happens after this. It definitely seems like Ukraine has transferred way too many reserves to this area, enough so to where like they've had to put off plans on attacks towards Svatova. They've put off plans on attacks towards Melitopol, or so we think. I mean, maybe they're still in the works, but a lot of these brigades that have showed up specifically in Soledar over the past week or so, like the 46th Air Mobile Brigade was actually on the front line in Zaporizhia, which was supposed to be used for some kind of attack towards Melitopol. So, you have to assume that's one of the more combat-ready brigades that Ukraine had that they'd set aside for a potential offensive, and now it's basically been burned up in this defense of Soledar.
An argument I have for the casualties actually being around 25,000, which at first I thought, okay, it's more likely to be on the lower side, around less than 10,000, but I changed my mind to go up to the 25,000, and that is because on militaryland.net, and I assumed it's fairly accurate, as it has been throughout the war. However, on the whole map of Ukraine, excluding all the ineffective battalions that have returned back to their bases, there's about 400,000 Ukrainian soldiers. And that is after all of the mobilizations. Ukraine has mobilized enough to have 1 million troops. but they only have 400,000 located on the map. Where's the rest of the 600,000? And now they want to mobilize another 100,000. So where exactly are all of these soldiers who have been mobilized and trained and sent to the front line? If they're not at Bakhmut, and if not at Zaporizhia to start their counteroffensive, they've been pulled from Kherson. Where have they gone to? There was enough at Kherson to start an offensive. The Russian pulled back. That means that they still are enough to fight in Zaporizhia, but there's been no offensive. The weather has been accurate. Everything has been perfect. Somehow they don't have the troops for it. And that would make sense if the troops lost at Soledar is 25,000.
I honestly I wouldn't talk too much about the losses, and because it's very hard to estimate, and we don't know, and historians in the future or people will work on this, but let's talk about the territorial implications of it, because this is the only thing that we can see for a fact. So the fact that the Russians took Solidar, in my opinion, started with the Battle of Yakovlivka, further east. So if you guys, if you want to edit and put the map, put it. But I think this is like the flower of Popasna, if you remember. They captured one village, and people said, "Oh, it's nothing," and all of a sudden, boom! They started attacking, flanking all the villages. And Solidar, they tried to take it for month and month. Did not work. The moment they got the high ground, they flanked the position, and it was over. Now the question is, what next? What do you guys think is going to happen from this moment on? There's, I think, 10% of Solidar left in Ukrainian hands.
I agree with you that it all started with Yakovlivka, but I think that is just a part of it. If we look to the south of Soledar and the direction of Bidorodne, at the same time as Yakovlivka fell, the Russians started advancing from the north of Soledar. They also focused their forces in Bidorodne, captured that, and then they had the high grounds both south and north of Soledar. And then they captured all the high grounds in both areas, and then they started the offensive operations. They had captured Yakovlivka, but not until 2 weeks after they started attacking Soledar from that area. And that is because they had to capture all and attack at the same time, so they launched one big offensive as soon as the ground froze. As both north and south of Soledar, it's an open field, so their armored vehicles could just drive through in the frozen ground and take advantage of that. And then suddenly they captured heaps of territory that they had previously spent months to get.
You know, I think one thing that happened is that the Russian paratroopers are the ones that actually attacked in this open ground. The guys from Wagner attacked the villages proper, like the towns. This is their specialty. But then the open ground, we see tanks and Russian troops, like the paratroopers, that really advanced through these fields. So yeah, I think that it was decisive. There's one thing I mentioned in my previous video that might be interesting related to Solidar, is that Ukraine is forming 2 new army corps at the rear in Poltava and Dnipro. And allegedly they pulled back units from Solidar for these army corps that will get all the new Western equipment. So it's possible that the Russians perhaps saw these movements, that these troops would be taken away, and this is when they attacked. This is one theory.
Yeah, my understanding of precisely what you're talking about, you have several brigades that are involved in that, and the main one that I'm aware of, I'm pretty sure, is the 93rd Mechanized Brigade. But my general understanding was they were rendered combat ineffective in Soledar, and they were withdrawn, and reorganizing them into a new corps was part of like the whole re-equip and prepare for battle process. So like they had a number of these brigades that had been, really cut down in battle. They're moving them off the front lines. They've been doing this the entire war. They haven't been letting their units get completely destroyed. They'll let them get down to, honestly, who knows? But like 50, 40%, 30% even manpower. Then they'll pull them off. Then they have, you know, the 30% that they have left as veterans. They re-equip the brigade with, you know, new conscripts or potentially even troops that are training in Europe and Great Britain right now, which I've heard you're looking at like up to 60,000 Ukrainian troops that are training abroad at the moment, which is, you know, supposed to be their answer for the, you know, the almost 500,000, I guess, is what people are saying now, Russian troops that are going to enter the fight into the spring. So, you know, my understanding is like these units are being pulled off and they're restructuring these new army corps to follow the lines a lot closer to what NATO standards are. So, you know, rather than having, you know, battalion commanders and stuff that really have to do whatever their brigade commander says, or brigade commanders that have to do whatever the Army Corps commander says, they're restructuring these, you know, freshly equipped brigades with, you know, and retraining the officers specifically with the mentality that, like, yes, when you get on the battlefield as a battalion commander, you're going to have a little bit of autonomy. Like if you want to attack, you know, a company command post of the Russians, you know, you don't have to wait for permission. Like if you see an opportunity to do that, which is some of what I'm not sure if you guys have seen this channel, but I think it's called like OAM or something like that on YouTube. It's a guy, he's like an Australian that used to be in the army and fought in Afghanistan. And he's been interviewing like a lot of people directly involved in the Ukraine war, like long form. Most of them are like Foreign Legion guys, and some of those interviews are absolutely fascinating. But a lot of them complain about like almost identical issues, and the main thing is it's like, you know, they're not allowed to do what they want to do on the battlefield. Like they'll see an opportunity, like they'll see a village and be like, you know, we've been sending drones over and there's barely anyone there. We could, you know, we can get in there and we could take this village or whatever. But like the Ukrainians themselves are like, you know, no, you have to follow chain of command. You know, the commander has to, you know, theater commander has to approve things like that. So that's my understanding is it's like these new army corps are going to be filled with some battle hardened troops that have come from these depleted brigades, along with NATO trained Ukrainian troops, and then retrained, you know, battalion and brigade commanders, which, you know, who knows how effective retraining is for career officers. But
my bad. Yeah. You know, I heard the same stories. Even people like literally told me these stories too. So I think it's legit. But there's one thing I just thought about when you told me these stories, that the foreign fighters, they complain that, yeah, they're not given enough autonomy. But let's think of a scenario. Imagine there's a village. There's not many people. The foreign fighters attack without permission. And imagine they're stuck there. What then, you know? Like if there's no support around, they'll just get surrounded and destroyed. So I think there's also this aspect that a lot of fighters that went to Afghanistan and Iraq, for example, they fought squad battles, platoon, company level battles, where you can have a lot of autonomy and a lot of action reaction, where your decision is really like around you. But when you're fighting like huge battles, like World War II type of battles, and it's really just by listening to what you just said, it's more complicated. You can't just take the initiative whenever you want, because it might put another unit in trouble if you do this, right? There's so many factors involved that, yeah, they complain, but because they have the previous mentality. This is what I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, really, like it comes down to like, I mean, basically like Soviet military doctrine versus Western military doctrine, and you know, both sides have the opinion that theirs is better. And when I say Soviet military doctrine, it's very much the same battlefield tactics that both the Russians and the Ukrainians use, right? Like most of these older guys that are, you know, brigade commanders or generals in the Ukrainian army were once in the Red Army, you know, like, and then, you know, a lot of these newer guys that have come in since the 90s got trained by those guys. So, you know, I mean, my understanding throughout the war has been that Ukrainian higher up, you know, like officers, you know, don't fight to Western standards, whereas some of the at the squad level, some of these guys that have been trained, you know, by, you know, whether it's like the Florida National Guard or the German military, the Polish military that's training these guys, like they have more of like a an autonomous attitude on the battlefield. Like they don't want to sit around for days on end and get shelled. Like if they're going to be on the front, they believe that they can do harassing actions to the Russian side and sabotage actions to the Russian side. But whether or not that's more effective or not, like I mean, it's pretty widely thought that it is. But you're right in the sense that it hasn't really been tested and en masse, and we don't really know. Like if the entire Ukrainian army started behaving like the U.S. Army, would it be effective against 60,000 artillery rounds a day? Like, or like had the U.S. Army and Western countries have never experienced fighting against this kind of foe. So
exactly,
there is some questions there.
And there's also one thing. I think the U.S. Army and all NATO armies have never fought without air supremacy. So every battle combat experience they've had in the last 30 years, the forces on the ground had total air supremacy. And I'm not saying it's bad, it's part of their doctrine. But now they're fighting against an enemy which has the air supremacy. And I think it makes you think about this entire way of how the war is fought.
Something else.
You're not saying anything.
Yeah. I'm enjoying the talk.
You're just listening. You're just chilling.
He's stealing ideas.
He's writing down. That's why he's like, we see his hand is like, free content.
Yeah. I use another thing to write. But
wow, flexible.
No. So no, I don't really think that deeply into all this. I think I'm more akin to the Ian's thought that whatever veteran troops that has fought, those are all the redrawn brigades, where because they are all expanded and they need to be regrouped. So that makes a lot of sense to me. The formation of the new corps, I think three corps. It's only two.
Eight brigades.
So I cannot remember. So they that's why they have all the Bradleys and everything, because they have nothing left. Everything else that they have is already in operations. Be it by the borders, or be it in operation in the Kharkiv, Luhansk region, or is it be in the Donetsk region. So that also spells into how desperate the Ukrainian situation might be. Which is why they're talking about tanks, but even the tanks, the kind of numbers that they are talking about is like pathetic. It's like 10 Leopard tanks from Poland. It's like, what can you do with 10? You can't even capture a village with 10, if in my opinion. So the doctrines wise, I don't think it will make a lot of difference, because we do heard of rumors. I'm not sure how true is it, that some of these Ukrainian troops use NATO tactics in a certain, I forgot which settlement is it, and then they got wiped out. I think it's Bakhmut, or is it?
Yeah. It's Opitne, no?
Opitne? I think.
But I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like they use that kind of close quarter combat or urban warfare techniques that against the Wagner group, and then they got wiped out. But that's the rumor. I did not know. So there's no guarantee that the NATO style of operations might be advantageous for the Ukrainians, because ultimately when you go to the front, it's still you with your buddies against the enemy with overwhelming artillery. So it doesn't matter how effective is your movement, as long as you get spotted, you die. So which is why I always tell people, I dread modern warfare, because it's like everyone is playing cheat code. It's like go into a game and then like everybody is just using cheat code. It's like everybody's just using cheat and then hacks, and then you just go in and you just die, and you don't even know how you die. So I wouldn't read too much into this NATO or Soviet doctrine.
But fun fact: the equipment that the US and Europe just sent, like the latest pack, would be enough, including the Leopard 2, for one armored brigade combat team. The way the Americans have it, with all the equipment sent, it could be one brigade, like one armored brigade, NATO style, just with Ukrainian soldiers. So that's going to be interesting. But once again, I think it's never enough. Like you guys
That's
said,
if they can reach the front. That's the
yeah,
question.
no,
That's
but
if they can reach the
I
front.
think it will. I think it will. Like at this point of the war, we thought of like it always reaches the front somehow. but
Yeah.
but I think that it's going to be interesting to see what is Ukraine's goal at the moment. Is it to reconquer lost cities like Soledar
Yes.
or something, or is
That's
it
what they
to
say at
attack
least.
for Crimea and get Crimea by spring 2023? Do you guys think that? Do you think that Ukraine will recapture Crimea by spring 2023?